It was a gray Friday afternoon, sixth period history. Our regular teacher was sick, so we had a substitute. He looked out of place from the start. An older man in a wrinkled shirt, his eyes sweeping over us too slowly, like he was memorizing our faces. He didn't take attendance, didn't smile, just stood there by the chalkboard with this faint grin tugging at his lips. The intercom suddenly crackled. Attention all staff. Lockdown protocol. This is not a drill. The room went silent. We'd only ever practiced lockdowns, never had a real one. My chest tightened as our substitute slowly walked to the door. Instead of hurrying to lock it like normal teachers, he turned the key with unsettling calm and slid it deep into his pocket. A nervous laugh rippled through the room, like some of us thought it might be a joke. But then the substitute reached into his jacket and pulled out a hunting knife, long, black, serrated. The sight of it sucked the air out of the room. "Now," he said, voice low but steady. "No one leaves until I say." Chairs screeched as we scrambled back. He advanced a few steps, dragging the knife across a desk, so it screeched. Mason, one of the football players, grabbed a chair and hurled it at him. The chair cracked against his shoulder, but before he staggered, he slashed wildly. The blade caught Mason's arm. He screamed, collapsing against a desk as blood spattered the floor. Panic took over. Some students tried the windows, but they were too narrow and bolted shut. Others crowded into the farthest corner. Our sub paced like a predator, tapping the blade against desks. Every tap echoed in my chest. Mason's friends tore strips from their shirts to wrap his wound, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, but there was no service. The lockdown had cut the signal. My eyes darted to the vents, the cabinets, anywhere we could hide, but he was watching, always watching. Then came footsteps outside, running, frantic. Someone tried the doorknob. "Help," I almost screamed, but the substitute pressed his finger to his lips and whispered, "Shh." He raised the knife, daring me to make a sound. Whoever was outside kept running, never knowing what was happening just feet away. Mason groaned in pain, his blood pooling under the desk. The substitute stopped pacing and crouched near him. For a second, I thought he'd stab him again, but instead, he whispered something none of us could hear. Mason whimpered, shaking his head. The substitute smiled like he had all the time in the world. That was when a loud crash came from the hallway. Another classroom must have tried to break out. The substitute's head snapped up. He stood, knife in hand, and walked slowly to the door, listening. Seizing the chance, a group of students bolted for the window. They tried kicking the glass, slamming chairs against it. The substitute spun back, roaring in rage. He charged, but before he could reach them, the fire alarm blared. Red strobes lit the walls. Sirens shrieked. He froze, knife trembling in his hand. Then, in one wild motion, he smashed the window himself, glass exploding everywhere. He climbed onto the sill, blood dripping from cuts on his arms. His eyes met mine for a split second, feral, triumphant, before he dropped into the bushes outside. Police stormed in minutes later, boots crunching on glass. They found Mason unconscious, pale from blood loss. They carried him out while the rest of us were herded into the hallway, crying, trembling. Officers searched the grounds, but the substitute had vanished into the night. One cop told us something that made my blood run cold. No one by that name works here. No sub was scheduled for this class. Mason survived after surgery, though the scar remains deep on his arm. The school never explained how the man walked in so easily, how he had a key, how no one noticed. Sometimes when I sit in that same classroom, I can almost hear the faint scrape of a knife across the desks. And whenever a substitute walks in, no matter who it is, I find myself staring, waiting for that same faint smile to appear again. It was the middle of gym class, and a smell of sweat and floor polish filled the locker room. I was lacing up my sneakers when a loudspeaker crackled overhead. "Attention! This is a lockdown. Repeat, this is not a drill." At first, the guys laughed, tossing towels and shouting jokes. But then the coaches burst in, pale-faced, and barked, "Get down. Now." We piled between the rows of lockers, the metal cold against our backs. My friend Aaron whispered, "It's probably nothing." But then a gunshot thundered from somewhere above us. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. Every laugh died instantly. The locker room filled with the sound of panicked breathing. Our coaches shoved benches against the double doors, their hands trembling as they stacked anything heavy they could find. Weight racks, laundry bins, even a rolled-up wrestling mat. The clatter of metal echoed too loud in the small room, and every sound made us wince. Outside, the echo of running footsteps grew closer. A sharp, panicked scream pierced the hallway, followed by another gunshot. The fluorescent lights above us flickered once, buzzing like flies. The freshmen at the back started crying, trying to bury their faces in their shirts. Aaron whispered, "Shut up, he'll hear us." His voice cracked as he said it. Then, bang, bang, bang. The locker room door shook violently. Someone was slamming it with their fists. A voice followed, muffled but deep. "Open the door, or I'll paint these walls red." The coaches froze. No one moved, no one breathed. He kept pounding, harder and harder, until the hinges rattled in place. Then, suddenly, silence. The silence stretched on, suffocating. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. I thought maybe he had left, until I noticed something dripping through the thin glass slits of the door. Red, smearing downward. Someone's blood on the other side. We sat frozen until the crash of shattering glass tore through the room. The high windows above the lockers exploded inward, shards raining down. A heavy boot slammed onto the frame, then another. He was climbing in. The younger kids screamed, scattering like mice. One coach bellowed, "Move! Run!" as the man's bulky frame dropped into the room. His shotgun gleamed in the harsh light, the barrel sweeping across us. He fired without aiming. The blast shredded a locker door, sending razor-sharp fragments flying. One boy fell, clutching his face, blood streaming between his fingers. The intruder stalked forward, boots crunching on glass. He muttered under his breath, words I couldn't make out, like he was talking to invisible people. Aaron yanked me toward the showers. We slipped on the wet tile as another blast thundered. The wall above us cracked, dust sprinkling onto our hair. Someone shrieked. Another student was down, his leg torn open. by shrapnel. The smell of gunpowder burned my nose, mixing with sweat and blood. We crouched in a shower stall, the thin curtain, our only shield. Through a tiny gap, I saw him pace, shotgun swinging side to side. He stopped at the wounded boy, pressed the barrel to his head, then yanked it away suddenly, laughing under his breath. One of the coaches tried to rush him, a desperate tackle. They slammed into the lockers, metal shrieking. The shotgun skidded across the floor. For a heartbeat, hope flared. But then the intruder drew a knife. The blade flashed, and the coach crumpled, clutching his side, blood pouring down his shirt. Students scattered, sprinting for the emergency exit. I pulled Aaron by the wrist, our sneakers slipping on red-smeared tiles. Behind us, the wounded coach shouted through clenched teeth, "Go!" Don't look back. The intruder retrieved his shotgun, firing wildly. Pellets peppered the walls around us, a locker door exploding inches from my head. We slammed against the exit bar. It didn't budge, locked. Panic clawed at my throat. Aaron kicked the bar again and again, until finally the rusty metal groaned and gave way. The door burst open, slamming into the wall. We spilled into the hallway, breath ragged. Behind us, another blast shook the doorframe. Screams echoed as others tried to follow. I looked back just long enough to see one boy fall, blood spraying the tiles, before the door swung shut again. We didn't stop running until armed police flooded the building. Officers forced us to the field, weapons raised, shouting orders. From the grass, I saw them storm the locker room. Hours later, they told us the intruder had been dragged out near the bleachers, screaming, bloodied but alive. The coach survived surgery, though he'll never teach again. The boy who took shrapnel to the leg still limps today. And me, every time I hear lockers slam shut, my stomach twists. The smell of sweat, gunpowder, and blood will haunt me forever. I was working alone in a basement office of my old high school. The hum of servers and the cool blast of the air conditioning made it feel almost like another world compared to the noisy classrooms above. I had just unwrapped my sandwich when the intercom crackled. This is a lockdown. This is not a drill. My heart skipped. I froze mid-bite, staring at the glowing monitor in front of me. The office didn't even have a door, just a wide opening leading straight to the hallway. I quickly killed the lights and shut off my computer screen. The sudden darkness felt suffocating. At first, I thought it would be like the old lockdown drills. Sit quietly, wait 10 minutes, then go back to normal. But minutes dragged by, and no follow-up call came. The basement felt too quiet, like the school above had vanished. I texted my co-workers, Dave and Gary, who were upstairs. What's happening? No reply. Just 3 gray dots appearing, then disappearing, like they'd started typing, but stopped. That alone gave me chills. The creak of the basement door shattered the silence. Someone had come in. Their footsteps echoed down the concrete steps, slow, deliberate, heavy. I slid off my chair and crawled under the desk, clutching my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. The shadow of someone stretched across the far wall as they reached the bottom of the stairs. The man didn't bother turning on the lights. Instead, He shuffled slowly into the basement, mumbling words I couldn't understand, like broken fragments of a prayer. His boots scraped against the floor, each step deliberate, like he wanted me to hear him. I gripped my phone tighter, and just then, a vibration nearly made me scream. A text from Dave lit up the screen. He's armed. Buckley's down. Red plaid shirt, red cap. Stay hidden. Do not move. I looked up, and in the faint blue glow of the server racks, I saw him. Red plaid, red cap, the shotgun dangling in his hands. He was heading straight for my office, my body pressed flat to the floor under the desk, chest barely rising, lungs aching as I tried not to breathe. He entered the office like a predator, shoulders hunched, shotgun scraping along the desk. The sound was metallic and sharp, like nails dragged across glass. He whispered into the dark, voice low and taunting, "I know someone's here. I can smell you." My whole body trembled. My hand covered my mouth, so hard my teeth bit into my skin. I wanted to vanish, dissolve into the concrete. He leaned down suddenly, peering under the first desk. His shadow grew long and monstrous across the wall. My throat burned with the scream I forced myself to swallow. He moved on, muttering, pacing closer and closer. Just then, a loud bang echoed upstairs, metal crashing against tile. The man's head jerked up. He hissed like a cornered animal and sprinted toward the stairs. His footsteps faded, and I thought I was safe. That's when I heard it, a whimper, very close. I turned my head slowly and realized one of the freshman helpers was here too, curled up in the supply closet, his wide, terrified eyes locked on mine. He was shaking so badly, the shelves rattled. I tried to signal him with a finger to my lips, but too late. The man's footsteps thundered back down the stairs. He had tricked us. He'd only pretended to leave. The intruder yanked the closet door open. The freshman screamed, a sharp, high-pitched sound that still echoes in my skull. The man dragged him out by his hoodie, pressing the shotgun under his chin. I wanted to move, to throw something, to do anything, but my body betrayed me. My muscles locked. I sat there paralyzed, watching as the boy begged, tears streaking his cheeks. The intruder muttered again, louder this time. "One by one, you'll all learn." Then he laughed, a horrible, hollow laugh. Gunfire erupted upstairs, short, controlled bursts. The man froze. His grip tightened on the freshman. Then he fired wildly toward the ceiling. Dust rained down from the pipes. The freshman twisted in panic, and the shot missed his head, grazing his shoulder instead. He crumpled with a scream. Blood spread fast across his hoodie. That was my moment. I grabbed the nearest metal stapler and hurled it. It clanged off the wall near his head. He spun toward me, eyes blazing. He roared and stormed toward me. I crawled backward, knocking over a chair, heart hammering against my ribs. He raised the shotgun. Before he could fire, a deafening blast echoed from the stairwell. Police. A bullet tore through his arm, sending the shotgun clattering across the floor. He howled in rage, stumbling. Officers shouted commands, boots pounding closer. The man, bleeding and snarling, bolted toward the back exit instead of surrendering. The chase ended outside. I could hear the gunfire through the concrete walls, short bursts, then silence. A voice barked, "Suspect down. Secure the scene. Relief hit me like a wave. My knees buckled. The freshman was carried out minutes later, pale but alive. Mr. Buckley survived his surgery too. But me? I'll never forget the blue glow of the servers, the smell of dust and blood, and the whisper that crawls back into my mind whenever I close my eyes. I know someone's here.